I got engaged wearing a 120-year-old dress. If you're familiar with my channel, you know that I'm all about making historically inspired clothes here. But before I was a seamstress, I was really committed to wearing antique clothes. So I thought today we'd talk about the lovely Edwardian ensemble I wore for my engagement. So just as a little bit of background, before Jack and I got engaged, he was kind of not really into the idea of getting married. And for me, that was a bit of a problem because I am very much the kind of girl that Disney is nowadays afraid of making movies about. I've always felt like getting married is the happily ever after that I was craving, and there was nothing else really in my life that I was really wanting like that. Like, I didn't care about a career, status, or any of that. I just wanted a love story. So with Jack questioning the idea of bringing in the state for your relationship and making it a legal binding, I was a little bit worried at the time because I really liked Jack and we got along quite well, but I was like, if you genuinely never want to get married, that is not really a future I see for myself. So I was a bit worried. It was also COVID times and everything was a bit weird at the time, let's be honest. But I was also an up and coming influencer on Instagram. So that was actually a really fun time back in the days when there were like influencer meetings in Edinburgh, and I would often go and talk to other influencers. It wasn't like we had huge accounts. It was just like people with a couple of thousand followers. But I feel like back then my community was actually way more local and probably way more engaged. So I was like talking to a lot of people and it was like just a local thing in Scotland that was happening. And back then photographers actually used to reach out quite often and ask whether Jack and I wanted to be models for their portfolio, which is a funny thing that actually happened. So quite frequently we would meet up with people and they would shoot pictures of us. So my favorite photographer is Bernadeta Kupiec. So if you have watched my I wore a 120-year-old dress to my wedding video, you will be familiar with this name because she is a Scotland-based photographer and I genuinely swear she is the best. Like, everything she makes is just so moody and so lovely, and I absolutely love everything she does, and she is such a lovely person as well. So if you're looking for a photographer, I highly recommend her. So a year before our engagement, Bernadeta had actually gotten in touch and she was just about starting out to become a wedding photographer and she was looking for models for a portfolio. So that is how we first met her. And she got in touch and was like, let's meet up in Glencoe and take some pictures. And it was such a lovely experience. And since then, a year had passed and she had gotten so much better at photography. And I'm saying that like knowing that she was really, really good to begin with. So I had been talking to Jack about it and I was like, I really want to shoot with Bernadeta again. She is so talented, she is so amazing, and I would love to do this again. So around October time 2020, Bernadeta reached out again and was like, I have some free time in my calendar and I'd like to shoot some more pictures. Are you guys up to it? And I was like, yes, please. I have actually been waiting for this. So normally when we did these shootings, Jack is a very spontaneous person. So often he would be suddenly realizing as I was going to bed the night before that he hadn't actually thought about what to wear the next day. And then he would be panic ironing shirts and like trying on things. And I'd just be lying in bed like, can you please just come to bed? I need to sleep. So this time he had a suit ready. He had actually bought a new suit. And he had everything ironed and prepared multiple days in advance. So that was a bit suspicious. And I do look back at it thinking, that wasn't normal. But at the time, I didn't really question it because I just thought maybe he's a changed man. For me, I had multiple choices at the time. It was October, so the Highlands were starting to look a little bit autumny, but it wasn't quite autumn yet that year. So we were still looking at a lot of greens, a lot of muted reds, but not very bright autumn colors. So I had multiple choices I could wear, but I was actually waiting for a dress to be delivered from America because back in the days, I did reach for a lot of antique dresses, not necessarily on a day-to-day wear, but whenever I did shootings, I would usually wear antiques because I wasn't able to sew yet. And then a few days before the shooting, this dress arrived. So it was an Edwardian ensemble in a lovely green color, and I was immediately starstruck about it. It is so beautiful. I've actually tried to recreate it since and sew a version of it myself because I love it so very much. But the antique items are just so much better. Like, even after 5 years of sewing, I cannot make anything that is this lovely. So it arrived and I was immediately like, I'm going to wear this. This is the perfect dress. And I'm so happy I did because it is honestly such a lovely dress. And funny enough, I've only worn it twice in my life outside, and that was for the engagement and for my sister-in-law's wedding, and we took some pictures just over Victoria Street in Edinburgh at the wedding. And those pictures, actually, often when I look for antique inspiration on Pinterest, I come across that picture of myself. So it seems like people seem to appreciate this dress as much as I do. But so I was wearing my green ensemble, Jack was wearing his autumny colored, I think it was a Walker Slater suit. So we were all dressed up in our fancy outfits, and we met up with Bernadeta in Fort William, and she took us over to Steall Falls. So that is a hike through mountainous terrain, and there were a lot of hikers dressed up in their proper hiking gear, and then us in our little Edwardian outfits. So that was quite fun. It's not the first time that we were overdressed for a hike. So we were just like walking around. The weather was genuinely perfect. It was super moody. The clouds were hanging so low. It was exactly the kind of weather you want when you're taking pictures in the Highlands. And again, there was nothing suspicious about it because we had done this before. People take pictures of us all the time. I wasn't really questioning it until Jack dropped to one knee and proposed to me. And I mean, this might be a bit of a spoiler, but obviously I said yes because you've already seen my wedding video. I genuinely didn't expect it, and that made the surprise even better. And also, Jack is not a very romantic person, but with doing this big engagement and getting my favorite photographer involved, and also us now having these pictures to look back at, I feel like he's really done such a grand gesture, which is very out of character for him, but I really love that he did it this way. So now that is the entire backstory of how we got engaged, and obviously then we got married a year later in Moffat at Auchincastle and had this whole lovely castle wedding. So if you're interested in hearing about that, I have another video where I'm talking about my wedding dress, which was also an Antique Edwardian dress, and a little bit more background about the wedding planning and my thoughts that went into it. So if you're interested in that, I'll just link it up here somewhere. But with all of that said, I think it's time to get out the antique dress and try it on. I'm really excited because I haven't worn it in a while and I genuinely love it so much. As with all of my antiques, it lives in this closet. And those of you who are frequent watchers of my account will now realize that, wait, there's no cable between the camera and me. That's because I have a new microphone. It means I can now twirl around and move without moving the camera, so that has been long overdue. But between all of my antiques and costumes, there is the lovely green antique dress that I wore for my engagement. And now this is a strange one because I keep talking about how light pastel colors just don't work on me, but just something about this dress, I don't know, it's magic. It is perfect, it is amazing. I love it so very much. And the way this ensemble is constructed actually changed a lot of my understanding of Edwardian clothes because it has a really interesting closing mechanism that then inspired many items I've made afterwards. Just to take a closer look at how the seams are finished. So you can see that there is a binding over all the seams, also in the armholes and on the side seams as well. And this actually appears to be hand sewn, which is really interesting because some of the seams look like they might be machine sewn, like the pin tucks. But then other seams, like here, you can see there is a rough edge and it's not really finished. And there are some bones sewn into the neckline. So let's throw on the blouse first and take a look at how it closes. So the sleeves, I feel like are a little bit tight on me. Not necessarily tight to the point where they would rip, but tight to the point where I just don't like it. I think the last time I wore it for my sister-in-law's wedding, I was much skinnier. It was the second year of my PhD that I keep referring to. It was not a good time in my life. I wasn't doing very well, but I looked really nice. So I'm just coming a little bit closer to show you the way it closes. So you've got the snappy clips that run along here, and you can see them on the other side as well. But you can see it's not symmetrical because there is this white underlayer that is not actually an underlayer. It is just all one layer that snaps into it, but I just love how that works because obviously looking back at Edwardian things, you always see these white underlayers, but knowing that they're not necessarily actually a detachable piece but part of the bodice is just so mind-blowing and cool. So I just close the little snappy buttons. Then down here I also have a hook and a hand-sewn eye. So now closing the neckline is definitely easier if you've got someone helping you. And then I just have this little bit of neckline that now needs to attach in the back here. That's us dressed up in our bodice. And I just feel like all of these details are so stunning. Like, I love this so very much. So that is the bodice done, which means now we're going to continue with the skirt. So haters are gonna say I could have ironed this, but I just don't feel like I want to iron it just for putting it on briefly for the camera. I don't want to put it under any more strain because I want this to be wearable for much longer and I don't want to like cause any damage to it. But let's put on the skirt and take a look at what it looks like. So the front is actually quite long because you would have worn it as like a little bit of a pigeon breast. And traditionally with Edwardian blouses, the back is always quite short, and I'm always wondering whether the back would have been somehow pinned down, because my struggle with this is when I lift my arm, the back wants to come out of my skirt. So in the past when I've worn this, I've actually pinned the back down, and then Jack would be like, don't you mind having like pins just sticking into your bodice? And I'm like, well, I'm wearing a corset, so good luck trying to get through that. So anyone who's watching this, maybe you guys can give me some kind of explanation of why the back is so short. Was it just that people were a little bit shorter and that's why the bodice was shorter in the back? Because I don't really see Edwardians as the kind of people who would do something impractical. So I'm just wondering if there's any reason why this would have been done in such a way. Okay, so with the back pinned down, it's now just down to trying. Nope, the back is not pinned down. Well, that's fine. I wasn't really planning on having it pinned down anyways. So I've managed to put it all on. Let me show you in the reveal. But I guess you see what I mean about the untugging in the back. So that doesn't look perfect. And I genuinely don't remember what I did for the engagement to make it stay in place, and also for the wedding of my sister-in-law. I'll probably just put a lot of pins in to make it stay in place. But generally speaking, this is by far my favorite antique ensemble. And I can't believe how well it fits. Like, it is a little bit snug, kind of like in the arms, like not snug, but I just don't like the feeling of how there's a little bit of tension on my arms when I move like this, especially when you have to like button all of this up. I can kind of feel it a little bit here and I don't like that. So I think if I had made this for myself, I would have probably just made the sleeves shorter. I usually make short sleeves on most things just because I'm funny about the sensation of it being tight here when I move. And obviously the skirt is a little bit tight. I think one of the snap buttons is also broken, so it doesn't really close properly. So it is not perfect, but considering this was made over 120 years ago probably, and it fits so well and it's still so well preserved, I'm just in love with this. It's just so pretty. I feel like I would love to wear stuff like this all the time. And I know you're gonna say you can wear stuff like this all the time, but hear me out, I don't have the patience to put this on every morning. And also I'd just be worried of ruining it. Like I said, I've only worn it to my engagement and to my sister-in-law's wedding. So I think I still want to be able to wear this in the future. So wearing it for day to day would just be a little bit careless and probably put too much strain on an item that should be handled very carefully. But I feel very pretty in it and I love it. And it has inspired so many other things that I've sewn over the past, because this neckline is just perfect. I love it so much. So that brings us to the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed me rambling about my engagement dress and about my historical clothes. And I do still have a wardrobe of more historical items in there. So if this is a video you guys enjoy, let me know and I can maybe talk about the dress I wore for our legal wedding. Because as I mentioned in the wedding video, we had a legal wedding because everything was a little bit difficult with me being German and trying to make sure everything goes through. So we had a council house wedding 2 months before the actual wedding. So that dress I haven't shown you yet. It is an Edwardian lawn dress, so it's not like a massive ball gown or anything. It's very plain for what it is, but obviously it can be worn as a wedding dress. So that one actually needed some restoration when I got it because it was moldy and ripped in a lot of places. So I could talk about that in the future as well if you guys like it. Other than that, I hope you have a lovely day, and I hope that all of your antiques will stay lovely and preserved. And in the next video, we're going to be sewing again, which I actually wanted to do this week, but my mock-up fabric never arrived. So I'll see you with more sewing and more historical inspired things in my next videos. Bye bye!